Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. I'm Bree Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I mean, the news in Broncos country is just not slowing down. It really isn't. Like these last 4 days have been insane. Today, obviously, we're gonna hop into the press conference, the big press conference today. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited to hop more into it. It just does not feel like we're slowing down here in Broncos country whatsoever. But Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I had to make sure I wasn't muted. Excited for our conversation today. Excited to have something different in Broncos country. We've talked about just the constant same old Hackett sound bites forever. And so now we've got something fresh and new.
Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we are live. So if you'd like to get your questions and comments highlighted, join the conversation with us. You can do so by searching for Mile High Sports over on YouTube or Facebook, or you can go ahead and click on one of the links that has been dropped below. We're not going to do tonight's show alone. However, we promised you a very special guest, and we have him here waiting in the green room for us. So without further ado, I want to introduce DNVR's Broncos reporter, Henry Chisholm. Welcome to the show.
What's up?
So happy to have you here. I'm going to drop you up in the top corner because you're a very special guest. Joey's face is going to be a little bit blocked, but that's all right for us. Sir, how are you doing today? How do you feel about the most recent news of Broncos country, including the brand new presser that was, it felt kind of good. How are you feeling about it?
I feel good about it. I don't know. It's nice to just have something done. It's nice to move on. You kind of mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but I don't know. On our podcast, it's been okay, Monday, did Nathaniel Hackett save his job? Tuesday, does George Payton deserve to be fired too? And so at least something finally happened. We can kind of start to move on. And every single one of these next phases is going to feel like they take forever too. Where now we're going through the coaching search and all that. But it is feeling like we're starting to progress a little bit. And I don't know. I think they made a good choice. I'm excited to see what Jerry Rosburg can do. It'll be good.
What stood out the most to me today was his thoughts on opportunities and being grateful. So I want to be grateful right back to all of Broncos country, the LTB community, and Henry, you as well for joining us today. And also my podmates, because without these co-hosts, we wouldn't have this tremendous show. So I'm expressing my gratefulness because that really stuck out to me. Rosberg was able to not only voice his appreciation, not only for all of Broncos country, but the state of Colorado. And he did so in such a genuine way that it actually made me feel pretty good about the decision. It felt real. It felt like he knew what he was doing, and he was unfazed by the entire dumpster on fire that's been happening lately in Broncos country. Zach, I'm going to throw it over to you. Thoughts on Jerry Rosburg?
Yeah, I think I like it. It's not super meaningful. It's a guy who's here for 2 weeks. He's been an NFL defensive coordinator. At least he has 20 years of coordinating experience. Never was going to get a look at a head coach. He was an assistant head coach for a long time in Baltimore. I think close to a decade with that title too. So it's good stuff. I don't know. He seems like a really thoughtful guy to me. I don't think he's rah, make you run through a brick wall necessarily, but I thought he's a really good speaker, a really eloquent speaker. And, I did think the one thing that was interesting was when he was talking about dismissing Dwayne Stukes and Butch Barry. And I think that's probably the most interesting part of his whole press conference and could dive a lot into that. But when he was talking about, he brought up the player relationships with Dwayne Stukes for really no reason. He was like, I might understand. And he really didn't address that point, but he said something like, I understand why a player might have a relationship with a certain coach. I've certainly had relationships with coaches like that. But here, sorry. So I respect that. I respect the fact that players would have relationships with coaches that I've released, but we're making these changes for the good of this team so we can win 2 football games. Which I think is a valid answer. Don't get me wrong, but I do wonder if maybe there's a little bit of pushback in that special teams room right now. But yeah, overall, I really like the move.
Yeah. For me, it's just I want to preface this. It's only 2 games, right? I don't think Rosburg is a guy that the Broncos are going to consider as head coach. I mean, it's already been kind of been Evero will get an interview. There was no Rosburg will get an interview, next year that came out. But I do. It is kind of refreshing because it did feel real. Like, I know that this guy, he was a special teams coordinator before this. I don't know how much media this guy's had to deal with in his past. He was retired before this, and he mentioned that in today's interview. My head would be spinning if I were the clock management management guy, and then I just got promoted to head coach. But he handled it with grace. He did no stutter at all. And then to Zach's point with the the Dwayne Stukes situation, this guy was a special teams coordinator forever. It does not shock me even a little bit that he thinks that he can do a better job. I honestly think that's what it is. He's done this forever. That was his main title, and I think it was for 3 NFL teams, most notably the Baltimore Ravens for like 10 years. He thinks, I'm sure he saw things working with it where he's like, yeah, I could do that. Like, I know what I'm doing here. I think I can improve this. And I think that led a lot to the dismissal of Stukes. Just him knowing that he's can do that and he has experience in it.
Sure, absolutely. I want to bring up this question, and I'm going to throw it over to Henry first. DBronx1414 asks, chances Rosburg gets the full-time gig next year. How do you feel about that, Hank? Do you think there's a possibility? Would you feel comfortable with that decision, or do you think he'll have a role with the Broncos moving forward?
I would be really surprised if he's the full-time coach. Who knows? Maybe he goes out there, he beats the Chiefs, and then goes and beats the Chargers, and all of a sudden everybody's excited about Rosburg, and then he gets an interview, and who knows where things go from there. But I really do think he would need 2 wins just for it to even become a conversation. Becoming a coordinator, special teams coordinator, I think it would start with him just being interested. If he wants that role, I don't see why he couldn't get it. Now, it depends on who the coach is. If you bring in Frank Reich, maybe Frank Reich has some friend who he wants to be the coordinator, and then all of a sudden that's not really a question. But if he's interested in coaching, because he is 67 now, he might be done with the day-to-day grind for 4 months out of the year. I could totally see him fitting in there, but as a head coach next year, I mean, it's
unlikely.
It's very unlikely.
It's a little unlikely.
Yeah.
I think the special teams coordinator point is a great idea, especially if they hire Jim Harbaugh, who of course is on the radar. I don't know if it'll end up being him. I do think that's a long shot kind of. But if they are somehow able to lure Jim Harbaugh away, Jerry Rosburg, I think, becomes the obvious favorite for special teams coordinator. As for head coach, I think the only way it would make sense is, one, you beat Kansas City and you beat the Chargers. That's a requisite. And then 2, if ownership's already thinking crazy aggressive, and I know they probably aren't, but if they're thinking crazy aggressive, we're going to blow it up and start the rebuild this year, and you're going to be bad for a year or 2, maybe Rosburg's a bit of a sacrificial lamb a la David Culley. It would not be my ideal thing. I'm not advocating for this strategy. I think even if you go for the blow it up route, you should try and find a Dan Campbell or an Arthur Smith or someone that can instill an offense or instill a culture or whatever. But I think there's that very small chance. But I don't know. It seems very unlikely.
Henry, I am interested to know if you took away anything else from the press conference today. He did come in with what seemed like about a 12-minute monologue to start everything off. Did anything else stand out to you about the statements that he made today? I think his note around not having a resume and not needing a resume really stood out to me. But what stood out to you from what Rosburg had to say today?
I think there was a lot, and maybe it's just because for the last few weeks, Nathaniel Hackett got a little bit defensive and kind of dodged questions and didn't open up all that much. And so it just feels like there was a lot this time, but I thought there was a whole bunch of stuff in there. You brought up the resume, and when I first heard that, basically what he said was, I'm not interested in coming in here and trying to build a resume. I don't need a resume. I've been around for a long time. People know me. I don't need to be worried about that sort of thing. I kind of took that as almost a shot at Ejiro Evero for not accepting the job, at the time, just because it was like, oh, you don't want this because you're worried about losing the Chiefs or whatever. Later on, he turned that around and said that he was really impressed that Ejiro decided not to take the job, basically out of loyalty to Nathaniel Hackett. So I had to take back that thought in my mind. But there was just so much to think about for the first time in so long. Like, it's felt like every single day it's like, oh yeah, we're evaluating this, we're evaluating that. It was just a nice little change up, I think.
Yeah, something new to chew on. There were a few moments where I was like, huh? But like with the humility and confidence thing, which I think makes sense to me once it was fully explained. But when he started and he says something like, it was just like a very confident thing. It was surprising, like, and I'm the man to do a great job these last 2 weeks or something like that. And I was like, whoa, like, I guess that's what you want to hear from your head coach, but it definitely kind of raised my eyebrows. He just, I don't know. It was a very interesting press conference. I think it was different from any head coach conference I'd ever seen. Like, there was a type of brutal honesty I have never seen. The fact he was so cutthroat with Stooks, like Butch Berry, he said, and I think it's fair to wonder, like, these two guys, the Broncos might have already been looking at firing. So, like, was it something Rosburg wanted to do anyways, but because the Broncos wanted to do it, that's why it was allowed to happen? I don't think, like, the Broncos were dead set on keeping Berry and Stooks these last 2 weeks. So I don't think it was like a Rosburg only decision that, they were like, hey, we got to let the guy do what he wants to do. I think they were probably motivated to do the same, but the fact he was so, I don't know, I guess nice about Butch Berry, which kind of surprises me given what I've heard about Butch Berry, but just like, Butch Berry, what a guy, love that man. Sorry to see him go. The offensive line has to be better. And then he's like cracking jokes about letting Dwayne Stooks go. Like, just like, hey, last I checked, there were 32 teams in the lead. And I'm not even trying to dog the guy for it. It was just, that stood out to me. It does make me think also back to Stooks' kind of eyebrow raising comments where he was like, I'm not going to be getting help from Jerry Rosburg. I know what I'm doing on special teams. I go to Mike Mallory for help. And that whole thing from week 3 or when Rosburg was brought in. I think just a fun little drama subplot.
No, I just think it was like it was just real. Like, I don't think that he thought that he would be in this situation a week ago. It's not like he was preparing for this moment. No, he just had to show up to press conference. He was hired the other day. Now he's here and he's talking. It's what's going on. Like I don't think there was any prep to this. So it was just real. And that's what got you all these talking points and all these, I don't know, interesting things. Zach, to your point with the Stooks situation, it was kind of funny for a second because I was watching it and he's like citing analytics and stuff. He's like, we ranked 32nd analytically in this area. I'm like, damn, he brought the analytics on Stooks. But I don't know. I thought there was a difference between the way he talked about the special teams and the way he brought up the offensive line. The special teams was brought up multiple times throughout it. The offensive line, it started off with Butch Berry's a fantastic man. I want to start there. Like that's the way it was going on. So I do also agree with you guys that I thought there was a little bit of a difference there.
I'm interested in what you think about those statements, specifically about the offensive line. However, I do think you can remove the personal character of an individual person in regards to the skill position's performance. Although it's interesting that you bring that up because I didn't catch the shade necessarily. I thought he was just making fun of the special teams because 32nd overall in the league is pretty terrible. Do you think the switch at O-line is going to create any difference here in the next 2 games? What are you looking for against the Chiefs and the Chargers to finish out the year? Henry, I'll start with you.
I think the biggest thing I'm looking for is whether there are real structural changes that you can just see immediately. We always talk about Dalton Reisner playing tackle in college. I wonder if they try bumping Dalton Reisner to tackle, seeing if that works, and letting, I don't know who they'd even bring up, Luke Wattenberg play. So maybe that's not the plan. Yeah. But I mean, it's stuff like that I think that they look at the most. And, somebody asked today whether, who was that? Maybe it was Reisner. No, it must have been Rosburg who was asked whether there will be changes to the starting five. And he basically said, we're going to let the Chiefs figure that out. We're not going to say. And so I think that's the first thing that jumps off the page is who's even on the field. I think if Netani Moody was still here, I think he would be on the field. With him gone, it kind of changes things. That's what's first. In terms of actually improved play for the individuals on that line, you can't ask for too much. Like, this is going to be 3 practices before they go play, and then they'll get 3 more practices next week. I don't think that we're going to see significant changes there, unless they really not like Ben Steele. That's his name, right? I don't want to screw that up. Yeah. Unless they really do like love Ben Steele and didn't like the previous coach, it would kind of surprise me. But sometimes you do see just like the heart show through a little bit more, and they're fighting a little bit harder. But really, the biggest question is just whether they change who's out there or not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's not going to be any sort of technique overhaul. Maybe they attempt one. He seemed fairly ambitious, and then was like, I've only got a short time to pull this off, but I'm going to do it. So it seemed ambitious. Anyway, I don't think they're doing any technical overhauls, and if they try to do one, it won't be successful. The only changes would be like, yeah, maybe they love Ben Steele. I get the impression they really didn't like Butch Berry. So maybe they love Ben Steele, and it's like, hey, let's get this one for Ben. But I don't know how much of a difference that'll make when the offensive line is so beat up. Like, there's a bit of a talent problem there too. And then I think you're right. Like, it'll be looking at, hey, what does this team have? You know, like Luke Wattenberg was drafted to be a center. Maybe you try that and put Glasgow back at guard. I'm not super optimistic about how that looks, but hey, like, that's what this point of the season's for. I think it'd be really interesting if Calvin Anderson was healthy. That was a case where I think Cam Fleming had a better relationship with Butch Berry, and I think with Ben Steele in charge, it might be different. I don't know if it necessarily would be different, but I think it might be. But there's not a whole lot of flexibility left in this offensive line because they just don't have the bodies. But I'm with Hank. That's what you got to watch for.
Yeah. Okay. So through the offensive line, I want to echo what Zach said at the end there. There just isn't a ton of bodies in this offensive line or guys that you feel confident in to be like, yeah, if I were the offensive line coach, I'd change this, and that, because there just isn't a lot of guys there to be able to even think like that. Like, most of these people are guys that are very unproven after our starters. But so I don't know if we'll have a huge change in personnel, but the whole firing situation as a whole, through my time watching the NFL, when there is a head coach fired midseason, it almost feels like when an NBA coach personally gets himself kicked out the game and just to like get the team, to get the team fired up and going. That's what I do think would be a big change. And I do think that we will see the players fight harder than a 51-14 loss. Because I don't know, just through my time watching the NFL, that's what I've noticed. When a coach gets fired, the new guy comes in and the players are now all of a sudden fired up to go and play up for this guy or show what they're still worth, because the change is around. Like, it's around the corner after this. So I guess that's the biggest change I see coming. It's just more energy.
Yeah, I mean, Joey, we saw it when Jeff Saturday stepped in there for a little bit. Now, did that carry on? Not really, but I do think if you have 2 games to do so, you could see a miraculous change here. I think we talk about it a lot here on Let's Talk Broncos about the human element and how much that plays a role in these types of circumstances. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I did have another human element conversation I wanted to bring up. I know both of you guys were at practice or around practice for the press conference. There were a couple of interesting injury notes to bring up. Kendall Hinton obviously was back on the field after a long bout on the IR. You also have Jerry Jeudy with an ankle sprain, at least I think was an ankle sprain, and then Greg Dulcich wasn't practicing. How do you guys think that impacts the next 2 games here, at least the upcoming week?
It's not good. It's definitely not good. I think there were 16 players on the injury report today.
Ugh.
And usually when there's players on the injury report, a couple of them are like, oh, he has an elbow thing, but he was a full participant. And you're like, okay, well, put it on there. Why not? Every single one of those guys was either limited or didn't participate, which they've had so many injuries this year. I can't be sure. Feels like a record for this season, though. There's so many guys. I mean, Randy Gregory, like you mentioned, Baron Browning. There's your two starting outside linebackers. Neither of them practiced today. That's
And
scary.
both of them have injury concerns. Like, I think
Yes.
going forward, especially now that Chubb's out of that room and it's all relying on them, that's something I'm worried about as we, start turning towards the 2023 season. I'm curious with the Randy Gregory one that really stands out to me. Like, he comes back, he has kind of this flare up, and it's like, he has an injury he's been dealing with for a long time, so we're going to shut him back down. How much of this do you think is the Broncos are really beat up? And how much of it is like, guys have been playing through injuries for a few weeks and we're 4-11, let's see if we can unearth a gem that's on our practice squad.
I think there's some of that for sure. You don't need to push guys right now. The weird thing is they kind of are anyway. Randy didn't practice last week. He made his return the week before, played in the game, didn't practice at all last week. Nobody thought he was going to play on Sunday, and then they played him anyway because I guess he looked good during the warmups. I wouldn't have done that, and now he's not practicing again this week. It just doesn't seem worth it if that knee injury is nagging. Just sit him down, and like you said, the season kind of wears on you. I'm pretty sure the Chiefs had 5 guys listed on their injury report, and I don't remember specifically if any of them were the full participant on there, but a lot of it just has to be bad luck, but the Broncos would struggle against the Chiefs regardless, but you take out potentially 2 or 3 more key players this week that you had last week, and who knows what they're going to look like.
Not only are some of the Chiefs players on the injury report full participants, they all are.
Wow.
Yeah, every single guy. And then on the Broncos, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 do not participates. I think 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those are projected starters. 10, if you want to say Deshaun Williams with Draymond Jones being gone, or 10 with Mike Purcell. You could throw either of those guys in. And then you have 5 limited participants, all 5 of which, except for Kendall Hinton, are also starters. Mostly key starters too. So, man, if Jerry Rosburg can pull this one off in Arrowhead, it's going to be. He deserves one of those plaques outside the stadium. I'm not saying make him the full-time head coach, but what's the problem with a plaque for just snapping the 14-game Chiefs losing streak, giving us a little morsel of joy? If he beats Kansas City, I will petition it.
I want to make a statement to that fact too, because he actually commented on the Chiefs rivalry instead of just it's the past and we're not really thinking about it. Like, he said the right thing, whether or not that changes anything, whether that means anything, whether or not they beat the Chiefs. He said the right thing in the most genuine way possible. Joey, I know you're trying to pop in here. What you got for me?
No, I just wanted to hit on something said earlier where it was like, the question was, and it was to Henry, and I thought both of these people to the left of me here, they have a lot more insight. They're at practice. They see different things than I get to see. But from an outside's perspective, it's just like, what even is the point of playing all these guys? If they're banged up whatsoever through these last 2 games, what's even the point? Like, why am I? I guess
Jerry Rosburg season,
yeah. I don't know, like, this fully healthy Broncos team, I'm wondering if we have a shot against the Chiefs. Now we fired a head coach, or we're going to be in the very fresh game off of that. Like, I wouldn't play Randy Gregory or Baron Browning, who both have now looked to have injury history. I wouldn't risk anything. What's the point? There is really no point to me. And I just wanted to hit on that real quick.
Don't want a Kyler Murray injury that, we were just talking about it today, Hank, where it's like, is he gone all of next season? Could you imagine if, I'm not even going to speak it into existence, but terrible.
Yeah, no, that's what you're scared of. Again, when you have Randy Gregory with a nagging knee injury, he's not playing well. All he's doing is getting called for 15-yard penalties and then punching guys after the game. Like, I just don't think that that's the kind of player you need to have out there right now and risk
Yeah.
more. Like, I don't know what you're looking for, and I get it's the Chiefs. The outside linebackers are important in that game. You gotta build the pocket. You gotta get a pass rush, all that sort of stuff. But I totally agree. Like shut him down. If Greg Dulcich has this hamstring thing, don't play him either. Who else? Quinn Miners has the rib issue. He's had a bunch of stuff all season. If you want to let him just take a week and rest through all of that, that makes sense to me too. So I'm right there with you, but it's not up to me.
The line has moved towards the Broncos since Monday. I pulled it up because I was like, wow, how bad is this line now? Because it opened at 13. It's at 12.5 now.
That Rosburg presser, man.
I might fade that with how healthy the Chiefs are and how beat up the Broncos are. And they played them kind of close last time. It's in Arrowhead. I could see, like, the Chiefs are notoriously terrible against the spread, but I could see them running it up a little.
I like how you mentioned the Randy Gregory news because you can't be punching people on Nickelodeon. It just doesn't go over well. He was successfully appealing that suspension. Otherworldly had to pay, I think it was $30,000 worth of fine. So you learn your lesson there. I still think the Rams player punched first, but I will watch the replay just to make sure I have an accurate assessment on that. After I get to this question, I do have another question regarding another NFL quarterback in the AFC West. But Frankie Abbott over at Frankie's Film, friend of the show, asked how many interceptions in the Chiefs game before we see Rippin'? It's a genuine question. He had to preface that so that I would highlight it. It took 3 for Russell Wilson last week. How many does it take this week? Because I want to know the Raiders have gone ahead and benched Derek Carr. It looks as though they might be moving on from him in the near future. If the Broncos are not looking to move on from Russell Wilson, will they bench him because the last 2 games are quote unquote meaningless? Talk to me, y'all.
I don't think they'll bench him because they're meaningless, but I do think there's going to be a much quicker trigger from Jerry Rosburg than there was from Nathaniel Hackett. In a lot of ways, Jerry Rosburg is just the anti-Nathaniel Hackett.
Yes.
Like, you just look through, I mean, it's the young, old, X's and O's guy versus special teams, gritty, whatever you want to call it guy. Just the way that one talks to the media versus the other. Like, there's no way Jerry Rosburg is going in there and playing Kahoot with the players. Like, that's just not how it works. It's the truth, though. Like, they totally
no, you're right. Just the image of it.
Yes, exactly, because it's so crazy. But that's why, I mean, we know that Jerry Rosburg wasn't the first choice for this job, but I do think he's a good fit for that reason, because he's the exact opposite, and because you want to have that level of accountability. You know, that's been the big word this week. And we've seen a couple coaches get fired. Benching Russ because he plays poorly seems to go right along with that accountability line. So I don't know what the exact number is. Maybe I think it's 2. I think it's 2. If the second one's like in the fourth quarter and you're still in the game, then maybe not. But if he throws 2 interceptions, I think that might be the number.
Back to back.
If it's like 2.5, yeah. If it's back to back or like 2.5 or something, I'm with you. I think 3. At 3, almost no matter the circumstance, he's getting yanked. I agree. It could be 2. 2, I think, is when Rip Watch is starting. And on 3, I think you've got to do it. But it does, because he was asked a question today, I think by DMAC, about the possibility of benching Russ or holding Russ accountable. And I think he said something, and it wasn't about in-game. It was about more generally, like, do you think you might go to Rip because he gives the team a better chance to win? That's where we're at now. But they asked that, and he said, what? Like, my goal over these next few days is to build the best game plan I can for Russell Wilson. So that was like a little bit of something that gives me pause. But man, if Russell Wilson throws 3 interceptions, how can you talk about accountability and leave him in the game?
Yeah.
So, since we're on the statement of Russell Wilson, I do want to ask Henry, how did you feel about Russell Wilson's statement on the firing of Nathaniel Hackett?
I mean, it was very Russell Wilson. You know, he was able to, for the most part, match his vibe to the mood. I think he threw in a couple too many smiles as he usually does. He was able to avoid answering questions in the same way he always does. He had the long answers. He named a bunch of teammates. I don't think I really learned all that much from Russell about this. You can't blame him. Again, he's in a tough spot. He did mention that it's been kind of a dark time. You know, you have your down days when you go through stuff like this, and I feel for the guy. Like I really do, but at the same time, like, it's just the straight PR answer as you'd expect from any quarterback who's been in the league for over a decade, and Russell Wilson in particular.
Yeah, Zach, did you have a comment on this one? I wasn't there, and I want to hear your guys' perspective before I go.
Well, admittedly, I missed this one too. I caught the Russell Wilson presser remote, but it's just because, man, I'm tired. Whenever I even like try and ask the guy a question, I'm not. It's just I don't think it's the best utilization of my time personally. Maybe that's me being a bad journalist, but I don't gain a whole lot from Russell Wilson's pressers. And yeah, that's the thing here. He is. I want to see like the actions that start like backing up the words. I think Russell Wilson is like a very smart person and knows how to say the right things in a media setting. It's like in 2K. I think I've used this analogy before, but like it's in 2K where they give you like the response options in the press conference, and it's like one's like, yeah, I love my teammate, what a guy, and the other one's like, screw my teammate, he's the reason we lost the game. And he's good at like pressing the right button consistently, but I don't think we've seen like the actual, it feels very much like a character or like a performance to me. I don't know if it's like the real deal, and so yeah, that's all. I don't put a whole lot of stock in it. I think he said the right thing, but I think that's the story of Russell Wilson.
Yeah. From my perspective, again, from an outsider, Russell Wilson is prime. Russell Wilson, like back when he was eluding everybody in the pocket. He's amazing in the press conferences. He's phenomenal at that. He making stuff happen after the play like that's Russell Wilson in those pressers to me. He's phenomenal in them. I don't really, even when I feel like I get something, I don't put much stock into it because I know that's not what he's trying to give me. Like I think that he's very, very good in those, and there's not much I can take away. That's just me.
Definitely. I mean, it's like George Payton yesterday, when he just says like, yeah, this is all me. Like, I screwed up. Like, this is my team. I picked the coach. You know, I could have put him in a much better situation. I am the reason this team fit. Like, he fell on his sword, and it was a 30-second monologue about all the mistakes he's made.
Yeah.
Russell did say like, I need to play better. Like, I know that I had a hand in this, but it was nothing near like what George Payton did. And there's no way Russell was going to go up there and say, no, I think I did my part. I don't think this is on me. Like that was just impossible. There's no way anybody thinks that. So he hit like Zach said, he hit the buttons he needed to hit. He moved on. I can't blame the guy for just saying what you're supposed to say and getting it over with and moving on. But it's what he did.
He does what he's supposed to do up there.
I can and I will. I will blame it. I don't have to like it.
I'll say this. My frustration with it, I guess, is because I don't like it either. But then, like, I don't know, heaven forbid, like Randy Gregory say something interesting, and then all of us media people go like, whoa, Randy Gregory said such and such. Anytime anyone says something interesting, we punish them for it, and then we get upset when no one will say something interesting to us. We should. we need to stop playing ourselves so much.
So we shouldn't schedule the whole pod around reaction. Sorry, Hank, I couldn't hear you. Go ahead.
It's all good. Dalton Reisner called out the media too. Like he said, like, oh yeah, everybody's talking about me pushing Brett. Nobody's talking about me giving him a hug a couple minutes later. And it's like, well, of course not. Why would anybody be talking about the hug instead of the push? Like, imagine
Broncos teammates embrace on Broncos sidelines.
Exactly. Like if you're at a game with a friend, you're sitting like your fifth row right there. You see everything that's happening on the sideline. You watch both those things happen. There's no way you're leaving the game and being like, wow, remember when Dalton Reisner hugged Brett Rippon? Like that's not the story. It's not the media who's saying you push the guy, like you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's everybody who knows that. I hated that as well.
Yeah. It's human interest. Like people are more interested in that than you guys giving each other a hug. It's expected that you like each other. It's not expected that you're getting into fights in front of 70,000 spectators.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we convince everyone watching at home that me and the entire LTB crew get along. Guys, I have one final question for you, and it's related to the AFC West in general. Starting quarterbacks for each team in the AFC West, I mean, you got to basically discount Carr at this point. And so I want to know, who do you think is the next starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders next year?
Wow.
Ooh, that one's...
I've got my answer.
That you have an answer? That one's impossible to answer. Knowing McDaniels.
Oh no, I
It's
know.
Tom
I know
Brady.
exactly who McDaniels wants. He wants Tommy
All right, go ahead. Go.
Brady. I think Tom Brady is not ready to retire and go out with the Bucks. I think there's a really good chance the Carolina Panthers beat the Bucks this weekend, and I don't think that's the way Brady goes out. I think he would love to be reunited with Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels would love to be reunited with him, and then he gets to work with Hunter Renfrow, which is the most Tom Brady receiver of all time. He gets Darren Waller, an awesome mismatch tight end, and he gets Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the league. It's like he'll get Julian Edelman, prime Gronk, and Randy Moss all on the same thing. And I don't think they're all at that level, obviously. But I just mean like that era, like all of Brady's favorite receivers all together on one team. Obviously, he's got that Fox commentating bag waiting for him. But like knowing Brady, what we know about Brady from like our very distanced outsider perspective, I think that guy just wants to play football until his arm falls off. Like, I don't think he's that jazzed about being an announcer. I think the money was like so good he couldn't refuse it. But I think his arm is still there, and I think maybe we start to see more of that decline. But I think he goes to Vegas and plays for McDaniels in the Raiders.
I think everybody on this podcast is completely underestimating McDaniels' confidence. That's what I think. I think McDaniels is the exact type of person to try to prove that he's going to do it without Carr or Brady, and he's going to go throw the wild card out there. That's what I think personally. It could be Peterman for all I know. It could be anybody. I have no idea. Bree asked the trick question of the century because I have no clue. It could literally be any of them. It could be Rippon. Like, I have no idea. It could be any of these quarterbacks out here. McDaniels decides he wants to be the starting guy next year. I have no clue.
Yeah, it's tough. That's a good question. I hadn't thought about it. I think you have to go after Brady first. I look to all the guys with the Patriots ties. I think that's the chain I would go down. I mean, Garoppolo would make sense. He's going to be a free agent. Who knows? Maybe the 49ers realize they should just keep him, but I doubt it. Jacoby Brissett was up there. I saw somebody in the comments mention Jacoby Brissett.
That makes sense.
That's a decent call, but I think that's kind of low on his list. I think he's just going to work his way down through all the available former Patriots quarterbacks. Like Baker Mayfield also jumps out, but that just doesn't seem like the right fit.
I got a crazy one to throw out. A little crazy. What about Mac Jones? The Patriots just played the Raiders, and they had that long embrace on the field as like Bill Belichick kind of awkwardly sat there and watched. And Mac Jones has been like visibly annoyed with the Patriots on camera multiple times. He looks like a Broncos wide receiver out there with how annoyed he is at his surrounding talent. I don't think it would happen, but if there's a world where maybe they can finesse Mac Jones away from the Patriots, I don't know. I think that's a long shot, but I also think it would be on like the Vegas odds.
Especially if Brady goes back to New England. But Zappy's a good one too.
Yeah, that'd be
I'd be surprised if there's no Patriots tie.
Does that mean I could
I
see
agree.
Gronk be a Vegas Raider? I would immediately buy the jersey. I just want everyone to
Oh
know.
no! Stop it! Stop.
Brock
it.
would be hungover for every year. I know she's so disloyal. She's so disloyal. It's kind of gross. But I don't know how many games Gronk would show up for, or how many home games. I think he'd sleep through a good portion of it.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you guys for entertaining my question. It's now everyone's favorite time of the evening. Henry is new to this game, but it's Joey's question of the day.
All right, everybody. I've officially ran out of Broncos trivia questions. So what I'm going to ask is just who is your favorite NFL coach? If you could steal anybody off of anybody in the entire NFL and place them as the Broncos head coach this next season, they don't have to be guys that aren't on a team. Anybody, who would it be?
Kyle Shanahan.
Kyle Shanahan for Zach? Okay. What can you give me a little reasoning?
Yeah. Sorry, I worried I cut you off there, Hank. Sorry. I just think you look at what he does offensively. He improves all the talent around him. I do worry about maybe his meddling in the front office, but like it's worked out well for the 49ers. They've got a pretty talented, good team all said and done, even if I don't really necessarily agree with how he got them there. I also think he's the type of, like, the Broncos need a very serious rebuild, and Kyle Shanahan, I think, is kind of the oversees all kind of czar-like figure that they need. And I don't think Bill Belichick's the layup answer anymore because look at what he's done with the coaching staff and with the scouting staff. Like, I think as much as he is to credit for the Patriots' successes on defense, he is to blame for their failures in terms of cultivating young talent, overspending on bad free agents, and struggling in offense.
Interesting. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Okay.
I'll take John Harbaugh. I think that's a good one. Maybe it's just all the Harbaugh hype from the last couple days that's kind of oozing over into this. But you just need somebody who can run a tight ship. Like, my biggest thing right now is, honestly, Jerry Rosburg fills this well, but you just need to give these guys a little kick in the butt. I think that's what's needed more than anything. I think Nathaniel Hackett was too much of a friend, which was because Vic Fangio was not enough of a friend, and you just wind up flipping back and forth until you find something that works. But it does feel like right now what they need is somebody who can just go in there and kind of command the room, and he's also a good coach. I was tempted to go Andy Reid. He was my number 2, but I think it's just the meanness more than anything of John Harbaugh that kind of gets it done for me.
There you go. Bree, what about you?
Sorry, I'm fighting with the comment. Does it have to make sense for the Broncos, or just a coach that I'd like to see coaching the Broncos? This is an important distinguishing characteristic, because I think, like, Mike McDaniel, do I think he would be able to work with Russ? No. Bill Belichick would just clobber any sense of brightness that you have in some of our young kids. But, would it be interesting? Because I'm a big fan of the Patriots dynasty years. So would I like it? Probably. I think I'd honestly start to get really tired of his stuff, because it was nice to cheer from him kind of from afar. Only spent a season out there in the East Coast. So I think either of those two would be really interesting for me, just because they're two of my favorite, if not polar opposite coaches. So I think that's finding someone middle ground would be interesting. I wouldn't really be able to name anybody of note, though, as far as, like, do I really think they fit the Broncos mold right now? Good news is, I don't know if there's a mold anymore. It looks like they've broken it apart with a pickaxe. And now we get to talk about it here on Let's Talk Broncos. Henry, where can everybody find all of your excellent work?
TheDNVR.com. That's where you can see all of it. Also, the DNVR Broncos podcast, YouTube, DNVR Sports, but I'm obviously on the Broncos part, not the other parts. Just search DNVR and it'll show up wherever you are.
Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for
Thank
that.
you.
We appreciate having you on the show. Please feel free to drop off as we go through our shameless self-promotion, but we appreciate having you on to talk all things Denver Broncos, and we're sure we'll see you around here shortly. Have a great night, Hank.
Thanks.
See you, Hank. Have a good one.
Joining, man.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, guys. That was a fun show. I think we conquered a lot today. Lots to talk about in all of Broncos country. Me and Zach have the same brain, so when we do the same thing at the same time, that's the result that you get. Guys, can you tell everyone what you got coming up here next?
Yes. Everybody follow me at JR Drafts. I am writing some CU stuff. I don't know where it's going to be yet, but you can find it at JR Drafts. Either or, you're going to find it at JR Drafts no matter what. I'm going to have an article loaded, it's cocked, it's ready to go. You can find it at my Twitter, so make sure you're following that. And then Frankie and I have a podcast going tomorrow. We pre-recorded it, but it is, I think, Frankie and I's best podcast. We broke down coaches we liked. We broke down the news that was breaking on Monday. Yeah, and if you want to hear me yell, I was yelling a lot on there. I hope the mic didn't break again. But yeah, everyone, you can find my work at JR Drafts and all my writing in Mile High Sports. Zach, where can they find your amazing work, my man?
Yeah, milehighsports.com, tons of writing over there at Zach_Seegers on Twitter for all of my cut Russ gospel. And since the chat is asking for, oh man, am I yelling? Sorry, I think it's my noise canceling headphones. And since the chat is asking for some slop here, I'll give it to you. Aaron Rodgers has a cap hit over the next 2 seasons of $103 million, and yet the Packers just signed Elton Jenkins to a massive offensive line contract. And look at that roster. Look at how much they've invested in the defense. The notion that spending $107 million over 2 seasons on the quarterback position makes it impossible to construct an NFL roster is nonsense. That is burned away by just even the smallest amount of critical thought. Just like look at NFL rosters, do like addition, like triple digit addition to be fair, but addition, and you'll see like it's golden. It works. There's no problems in terms of math. The only problem would be if you think Russell Wilson can be a top 10 quarterback. And if that's the case, the problem is with you. That's what I'll sign off with.
All right. Joey, can you top it?
No. Can I top the slot?
Yeah.
I mean, I probably could.
Well,
I don't
Frank got so nervous so quick.
That's probably not what you want to ask. I'll let you take the reins.
Really appreciate that there. Zach, it was an excellent point. My brain misfired. Coop says it was a mic drop. It was a mic drop, so I'm going to get myself out of here. If you can follow us over on Twitter at the LTB Podcast, you can also follow me, Bree Maces 303. Catch me on the Fan Cave 1 to 2 p.m. every single Monday. Your cure for the case of the Monday, Zach Seegers and I break it down. We'll have lots to talk about after this Kansas City Chiefs game. It will not probably be positive. Can't wait to talk the rest of the week with you all. Zach and I are off tomorrow, but we'll be back Friday and Saturday to give you some sort of a preview for what to expect against the Chiefs. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow, Broncos country.
Watch Let's Talk Draft.